Is that good? Sweet. Thank you for coming. A lot of people I know, a bunch of students here, especially if I don't know you, thank you for coming out, I appreciate it. Today's gonna be kind of two themes. We're gonna have a bit of a technical theme, which is gonna be 360-degree throws from an overhook. But strategically, the greater theme is gonna be about selecting techniques based on two factors, risk and cost of failure, okay? So, has anybody seen Free Solo? Does remember that? It's a documentary about a guy climbing El Cap without any ropes, and it's really good, you should see it. But at one point in the movie, somebody asks him, like, you know, how are you doing this? Don't you think it's risky? And he makes this really interesting point where he says, you have to distinguish between risk and cost of failure. He's like, for me, it's not risky. He's not likely to fall. The cost of failure is very high, but he doesn't view it as risky, right? So when we're selecting techniques, I want to try to view things through this lens of how risky are they, how likely are they to fail, and what is the cost of failure? So what happens when they do fail, right? And then we'll try to kind of have a conversation looking at specific things as to kind of what their strengths and weaknesses are based kind of along that, okay? Everybody knows what I mean by overhooks and underhooks, okay? Really quick, underhooks come in kind of two varieties that I call a deep underhook or a shallow underhook. They function quite a bit different. The idea of a deep underhook is that when I have his hip, if I can get my hip to him, I can pick him up forward and I can pick him up backwards, okay? Shallow underhooks don't afford me the same amount of lift. They function very differently. It's hard for me to pick him up forward off of a shallow underhook. I can throw him this way and I can do a ton of stuff off a shallow underhook. I like it a lot, but it doesn't function the same as a deep underhook, okay? So typically if Les has a deep underhook on me, I'm gonna take an overhook and it's this shoulder to shoulder overhook and I'm looking to keep this hip gap. As long as I can keep that gap, it's very difficult for Les to pick me up from this shape. And you'll notice the way I'm keeping it is by keeping my hip away, driving my shoulder into his shoulder, and trying to find that sensitive point right in the back and put lots of pressure right there, okay? We're not gonna do a ton of this today, but just know that if he has this deep underhook, being bladed with a bit of pressure and fighting for that hand is usually what this is gonna look like, okay? What I wanna create is a bit more of a shallow underhook from Les so that I can win his elbow. And we're gonna do a bunch of stuff off of that style of overhook, okay? So I would like to be more here, okay? So it's a bit of a different look. The way we get that is I'm gonna probably kick him up, I'm gonna put pressure in his shoulder like I was just doing, win head position, and then return to square, okay? So Les and I are wrestling, he finds an underhook, nice and deep, 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 deep. Yeah, there we go, okay? I'm gonna wrap, blade, give him pressure, put my head in the pocket, and square back up. So now you can see he's still on an under, he's in my armpit, but now I've got this grip on the elbow, and he's not in a position to lift me with this grip. Does that sort of make sense? So one more time, he's gonna win a deep under, I'm gonna take an over, put pressure. If he came in really tight on me, I might have to like kick him up a little, get my hip away. I'm putting my head in his neck and squaring back up, okay? And that's the shape I want to get to. That's where we're going to do most of our work today. Okay, let's try that really quick. Okay, so as I said, I want to try to talk about 360 degrees of throwing or taking down from this grip, okay? What I mean by that is how far off of center I'm going to turn, okay? This is east, this is east. Okay, so we're going to call that east, whether it is or isn't. Here. So we're going to look at a throw going east. We're going to look at a throw going south. We're going to look at one going west, and we're going to look at one going north, and we're going to come back to east again. Okay. So we're going to have something going in each direction. Not necessarily in order of importance or anything. Just I needed a theme, and that's what I chose. Okay. Again, the greater theme though is going to be this idea of what is the risk, what is the cost of failure. Okay. So. The first one we're going to look at is going to be in that sweet spot. If we picture a graph where we have at the top left techniques that are both not very risky, as in they don't fail very often, and they have a low cost of failure, so it's not so bad when they do fail, that would be up in that top corner. Those are the techniques we love, okay? Stuff in the bottom corner would be things that are risky, i.e. they fail very often, and they have a high cost of failure. Those are techniques we generally want to avoid, okay? It's not exactly a linear relationship. It will change a little bit, especially the cost of failure, right? Sometimes the cost of failure can be more extreme and will actually bleed over and start to make the technique more risky than it should be, right? If we got to the edge of the mat and asked everybody to walk along the edge of the mat, no one would have a hard time doing this. But if we went up on top of the roof, a lot of people would have a hard time doing this, right? Because suddenly when the cost of failure increases, you internalize that and it makes it riskier. You're suddenly more likely to fail, right? So what we'd like to do as often as possible is learn to pre-address the cost of failure so that we don't get in our head about it and it's easier to pull the trigger on things, which actually makes them fail a lot less, okay? So our inside knee pick is going to be our first attack moving backwards. This is going to be our first eastward attack. I'm going to be in my shape here. I've got the left wrist in my armpit, clamping his elbow. You don't have to slap him that hard. And my head's in his neck, okay? I had a match in Ohio last year, and guy was a judo black belt. And one of the things I saw was that somebody tried to do an outside trip on him, and he countered really well with Uchimata. And I wanted to try to say, well, how can I pre-address that? Okay, so what happened is my buddy Stefan had a match with this guy Enrique, and he tried to do this here to this outside trip. Enrique had the underhook, and he's got this. He leaned forward, lifted his leg up, and threw him that way, okay? So we're trying to address that risk as often as possible to try to make that less likely to happen, okay? So the inside knee pick that I'm looking for is gonna start with two things. I'm gonna place my foot behind Les's heel, and I'm gonna cup the back of his knee with this hand. So I need to have this hand accounted for. If he's winning my wrist, I'm not gonna be able to do this. So we're gonna have a hand fight here, and I'm gonna be into this shape. When I decide I'm ready to go, I'm doing this, okay? Notice I'm not gapping my head, I'm keeping it in nice and tight. There is potential impact here. If I gap and come back in, we clunk heads. If I'm already touching him, it's just pressure, there's not impact, and that's gonna be fine, okay? So same thing here, that. Really, really simple. I'm blocking low and I'm pulling the knee. This makes it very difficult for him to generate force in that direction because it's really low on the lever. I've got that bolstered here and my head's still inside so he can't drop his torso. Does that make sense? Try to kick me up on that. All right. It's very difficult for him to generate real meaningful force compared to here. Right here he can chuck me much, much easier, okay? So our first technique is gonna be our inside knee pick moving in that direction. So we can start from the deep underhook, here, deep overhook, blade, head goes in, it's gonna be here. And what I'm looking for is that foot to be a little bit forward. If it was really far back, I wouldn't be aiming at this technique. But if it's nice and forward, or if it was far back and I could draw it forward, i.e. pull him here, then that's what I'm looking for, okay? Let's keep him east just for the sake of argument. Here, big step. I'm gonna continue to drive, pull the leg and pull the arm down. Really, really simple. Sometimes we'll have to go to the mat on it. Sometimes like I'll drop almost to like a kochigaki hook or something like that. But for now, we're just trying to pick it and pull it. Does that make sense? So it's just this. Yeah? Deep underhook, overhook, blade, pressure in, wrestle, 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 right down. Does that make sense? We're gonna fall backwards on this, so you're break falling, slap, tuck your chin. Okay, groups of three, please. 1, 2. One side, and they're trying to pick the opposite leg. Everything's gonna be on one side of the body for this, right? So if I have his left arm, I'm gonna pick his left knee, right? So I'm going here, right? I'm seeing some people that are wanting to get like across the body on this. This is not gonna be anywhere near as effective. Okay, let's get it all on one side of the body, right? A couple of good questions about like how I'm interacting with the foot. I just want a bit of a blockage there. It doesn't have to be anything super important. The problem with a inside knee pick normally is if he bends his knee at all, I really lose leverage on it. So if I get this and he moves his foot backwards, yeah, like this is no longer very strong for me, right? So all I'm really trying to do is just make sure that he can't move it back really easily, right? And now this lifting mechanic is going to be much, much stronger. And I'm pulling a little bit sideways. I want to think of like turning a big boat or a truck, something with a big wheel. Okay, one more time. Okay, time. Let's talk about, so how does this work on our little diagram, right? Very low risk, does not fail very often, insofar as it just works a lot. It's an easy application, it works a lot, and it does not fail extremely when we do it properly, right? In that the cost of failure is quite low. If I try that bigger outside hook where I'm trying to come in here, this has a much higher cost of failure, right? Again, I usually end up on my back if he's Johnny on the spot with this Uchimata, right? As long as I keep my head inside on this, even if I whiff on it, like I'm fine, right? The cost of failure is extremely low. This is borderline a free technique, right? So we really want to implement this as often as possible. One of the differences between Sambo and Judo that I've certainly noticed whenever we get like experienced judoka that come to drop in for classes, or whenever I've met judoka in competition, is that they get very, very frustrated when you put your head under their chin, right? They cannot spend long periods of time there in judo. It's against the rules. You have to get certain grips and throw very quickly. So you can really frustrate people by controlling posture, by keeping that head into a very strong wrestling position, okay? It is Sambo wrestling. It is in many ways closer to freestyle wrestling in a jacket than it is closer to pure judo, okay? Even though there is a lot of crossover for the techniques, okay? So this guy lives up in that left-hand corner where it's not very risky, which means we can try it without worrying that it's gonna fail. And the cost of failure is very low in that when it does fail, it doesn't fail catastrophically. In fact, it will frequently set up some of the other stuff we're doing, okay? And again, this is our no degree of turn, right? So this is our 0 degree of turn from east, right? I'm just driving him straight backwards, okay? Our first turning throw, our 90-degree throw, is going to be a fireman's carry, okay? Fireman's carries are riskier, they are going to fail more often, and they have a higher cost of failure in that they are a sacrifice technique. I'm going to end up on the bottom if I don't do it right, okay? What's more, if we do it the way that we would do it in, say, a freestyle wrestling context, which is wrapping the thigh, it's not very well suited to submission grappling. We're going to put ourselves into positions that are frequently exploitable for our opponent, okay? i.e. we'll get crucifixed a lot if we do this wrong, okay? The one that I really like to do is actually quite similar to what Kathy did yesterday. She called it a hurdler's stretch, I think. We call it a James Brown, which is this shape here. What I like about this is it gets me low very, very quickly. I perform this throw as a drag down. I am trying to weld their shoulder to my shoulder and then put my shoulder on the mat, okay? I don't actually like to throw people in the way that I don't like to lift them and elevate them. I find that much more difficult for me. And I've got like what I think of as coaching disease, where I put other people's safety before my training a lot of the time. So I tend to do throws that are like drag downs that tend to have easier landings rather than things that are big, high amplitude throws, okay? So to perform this, I'm gonna wrap, I'm gonna put my head through his armpit, I'm gonna be as tight as I can, and then I'm gonna go straight to my shoulder. This will be tough for a lot of you people, but that's okay. Just keep working on it. We'll talk about common mistakes and things that we see a lot, okay? But without less, I'm doing this. Okay, notice I went straight to my shoulder, hip didn't touch the mat, and my elbow is really nice and tight. From here, I'm gonna scissor my legs and get on top. You okay to take this one? Okay, so underhook, overhook, push. I get into here, maybe the leg is back, but I can feel Les is pushing into me a bit. I'm gripping his elbow, my head's gonna go through his armpit, I'm extending this leg, and I'm gonna fall to my side. So, landing, shoulders on the mat, Les's shoulders on the mat, my hip is up, I scissor my legs, and I get on top. Okay, go. No, I'm kidding. There are other ways to do fireman's carries, right? This one's really common. Pick them up, dump them, things like that, okay? In terms of getting our risk down, getting our likelihood to fail down by limiting our cost of failure, I'm gonna wrap his calf and throw his leg. I am not gonna wrap his quad and hug it tight. That's what gets me crucifixed, okay? So, can you crucifix me? So, if I go here, and he now has an underhook, and he clamps his knees together, even if I throw him a lot of the time, we'll end up, well, that didn't go well. Now I'm probably gonna lose, right? So we don't wanna end up in this shape. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wrap around his calf, not even gripping it with my hand, just kind of like around Les's boot or around his Achilles. And when my shoulder hits the mat, I'm gonna throw it forward, okay? So I'm gonna go as slow as I can. Pressure. Does that make sense? My hand is forward. I'm looking at my boot. I'm not looking at the ceiling. Looking at my boot, hip is up, switch my legs, and come across for my underhook. Does that make sense so far? I'm sliding my foot along the mat. That is definitely my preference. I apologize for those of you that didn't think ahead to wear Sambo shoes, but that's your fault, not mine. Yeah, these mats are a little tacky. If you can't slide, it's fine. You can take a step. Honestly, you can go down to your knee. I know some people that like to do like an octopus on this and drop from there. I'm not a big fan of it. When I hit my hip, the momentum tends to die. My goal is to go in one move from my shoulder, or sorry, their shoulder directly to the mat with all of my weight, right? So from his perspective, it shouldn't feel like he's being thrown and lifted. It should feel like he's just getting dragged into a forward roll, right? When I do my forward roll, my shoulder just goes to the mat, right? And I do a forward roll. Really, really simple. I'm not getting thrown on that, right? This should kind of feel the same. So again, elbow, clamp really tight. One of the more common mistakes we see on this is people post to their elbow. So they'll go like this. That'll kill your momentum every time. I gotta make this thing really tight to my body, land on my shoulder, and throw this leg, okay? So one more time at speed. Here, head in the pocket, foot's too far, can't hit my knee tap. Big step. That way. Does that make sense? Okay, 1, 2. Try not to land on my hip, and my hip is up, right? We were just having a conversation over here. The deeper I can get this knee between their feet, the better it'll be, right? A lot of our throws should look like a ball rolling, where the top is moving forward and the bottom is moving backwards, right? So my bottom half should be moving towards the person, their top half should be moving past me. That's where we get those really nice hypothetical center of gravity between us that it's all pivoting on. If I drop my hip far away from them, I have to put a lot more effort into lifting this person over me, and that's much, much harder. It's always easier to get deep and move under somebody.
So just to clarify, you said that there is drops in between the center.
Ideally, right? Again, there's a bunch of different varieties of this. I'm going to try to show some competition examples in a second. Sometimes it'll go sideways. Sometimes the leg will act as more of a blocking mechanic where it takes him more that way. But ideally, I'm taking him this way. So what I would prefer not to happen would be this. Right? I'm nice and far from him. This is going to be harder for me to finish. If I can get that knee in super deep, where I'm like here, right? That's going to be way easier for me to throw. Does that kind of make sense? But it's very slidey. You know, again, I future-proof for this shit.
Even though you started from that distance, you closed the gap.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Get in there. You're the bottom of the wheel. You got to go that way, right? He goes that way.
Sliding in which direction? Like the underhook? Like
Slide. I'm
sliding towards underhook, or?
like, again, I want to get the knee that is bent between his feet, or her feet, as the case may be. Like, so the straight leg is the overhook leg. So if I've got a right hand gripping his arm, the right leg is straight. The left hand is not going to be, is going to be reaching for the calf, right? And then this one's going to be bent, right? Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. Things in the butt if I can see it. One of the biggest problems I'm seeing around the room is people are not leading with their head, okay? I should have probably stressed this a little bit more. The first thing that's going to move on this is my head into the armpit. So it's starting in the neck, it's going to find its way into the armpit, and then I'm going to drop. If I don't put my head in first, it's going to get stuck in there, and I'm going to end up on my back. So if I tried to do this, where I went, yeah, that's not going to work, right? I just get a mouthful of Les's armpit. So I'm leading with my head, right? Head goes into the armpit first thing, okay? And then I'm wrapping the calf from there, right? And through.
Where are you driving the head up then once it's through?
I want to keep good posture, but I shouldn't really feel like I'm carrying weight on my back, right? At no point should I feel like I'm squatting this mat. They can flip around and land on their feet, right? If I land on my shoulder and I pin their shoulder to the mat, I know that there's no way they're going to resist that. Does that make sense? So if I was to do this instead, right? Like there's a drop for him, right? So it's a little harder on Les, and it gives him an opportunity to land. See, he landed on his feet and turned in. I can't pin from that. By the time I try to pin, he's in turtle, right? Whereas the other one, I typically will end up in side control. It's a much more effective technique from my perspective. But if going to both knees is what you need to do to wrap your head around the turn, that's totally fine, okay? Again, what I'm looking for from that is a 90-degree turn. We were facing east, and we ended up facing south, right? We're doing one 90-degree turn, okay? Our 180-degree turn is going to be our drop shoulder throw. I really like drop shoulder throws. They are at a different point on our graph, right? They are probably the highest cost of failure of anything we're going to do today, okay? Which means that we'll get in our head about it a lot of the time, and then the risk will increase as well because we're worried about it. So I learned to get good at drop shoulder throws in sports that both reward taking the risk, i.e. they score quality of throw. I get more points if he lands on his back, right? Sambo, I would get 4 points for this. Jiu-Jitsu, I'd only get 2, and it's too risky for me to even bother trying in Jiu-Jitsu if I'm playing a game, okay? But in Sambo, we don't lose points if somebody takes our back either, so it's less of a risk, right? Sport Sambo doesn't allow chokes. Combat Sambo does, but Sport Sambo doesn't. So if I'm not worried about Les taking my back for point's sake, and I'm not worried about getting choked, then I'm just not that worried, right? So I can try this technique. Once I got good at it, now the risk is low enough to me that it overwhelms the cost of failure. I'm successful at a rate of it that I don't really care how much the cost of failure is, because it doesn't fail often enough for me anymore. Does that make sense? Another thing to know about me is that I'm old and I have bad knees. As a result, I don't like to drop to my knees anymore. When I first started doing drop techniques, I would do this, right? And I would drop on my knees. Now, I try not to break from the mat, so I do this, right? And you can hear that swish. I'm on my knees, I'm traveling in the direction I want to be traveling, and I'm not gapping to the mat, so it's a lot easier for me, okay? That said, I'm wearing shoes and knee pads, so that's also easier, okay? That movement is a lot like a curtsy lunge, if you've ever done a curtsy lunge, this thing, okay? Try that, everybody hop up and try doing this, okay? Here, stepping to the side, bending my knee, okay? Notice I'm moving in the direction that the sole of my foot is moving, okay? At the same time now, I'm gonna turn my other foot and go to both knees. So instead of just doing this, I'm gonna do this. Yeah? I bump them with my body, right? Now, when you watch competition examples, especially high-level judo, you see people jump all the time. That's totally fine, right? But for me, this has been much, much more effective. So the shape I'm trying to make is when I want to go, I'm going to throw that foot in, and then I'm going to curtsy lunge, and I'm going to go to both knees, okay? And again, ideally, he will be moving forward the whole time. So as I start rotating, I'm pulling that elbow forward, right? And I'm going to disappear underneath him. With my shoulder, it's a shoulder throw, I'm trying to put him between my bicep and deltoid. I am not putting him in my neck, okay? Cannot emphasize that enough for now. We are not putting him in the neck, okay? I want to be here. So I'm going to be here, step, in nice and deep. Notice I've slightly over-rotated. I'm not here, and I'm certainly not here. I want to be just slightly over-rotated. Clamping my elbow. This is just wrapping on top. I'm not trying to physically grab his arm with a Lego grip, right? I'm just going right over the top. Then it's the same thing as last time. I'm just going to lean forward and put my shoulder on the mat. I'm not trying to gain elevation. I get no points for height. I'm just trying to bring him down and put his shoulder on the mat, okay? So this is our 180-degree throw. We started facing this way, and now we're facing this way. Deep underhook, deep overhook, blade, 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 head goes in. I like a little pressure for this. If he's pulling back, this is not gonna happen, right? I need his weight moving this way a little bit, so I drive into him with my head, and when he pushes back to me, I'm gonna disappear underneath him, right? So I don't know if you've ever had the weird experience of going to lean on a wall and it turns out it's a door, right? That's kind of what we want him to feel like. He's putting pressure in, expecting resistance, and then I disappear, okay? So I get here, lots of pressure here. If that foot's forward, we're hitting that, okay? If he's nice and square for me, we're disappearing underneath. What I would like to see initially is just how deep we can get our hip between their knees on our curtsy lunge, okay? So I'm just gonna do this, I won't even throw him. He's gonna give me a nice wide stance. I'm gonna go step here, and just see how low I can get. My butt's all the way through here, my knees are slightly pointed to the side, and I'm in good position. Okay, can we try just that? 1, 2. Okay, step back step, this thing, right, where we do that, or they do that in judo all the time, down the mat, etc. We're doing the same thing here. I didn't really emphasize it that much, but the first motion is going to be if I'm turning to my right, my left foot is going to step across a little bit to make space for my curtsy lunge, right? And the deeper I can sink that foot between their feet, the better off I'm going to be. So I'm seeing some people that are not moving that foot, and they're ending up like outside the feet as a result. And that's on me. I didn't emphasize it enough. Okay. So first motion is going to be slight cross step, then curtsy lunge, then both knees down, and I should be in position. And you can literally do it that slow for now. That's fine. Right. But again, you'll see I'm not leaving the ground. I'm not jumping at any point, and I'm coming down live toes. If you're coming down on your shoelaces, it's okay, but we'll come back to why it's not preferable in a couple of minutes. Okay. But just on your own if you have to. Cross step, curtsy lunge, knees down. Yeah? That looks slick. Looking at you guys and just be like, what you're doing wrong is this. Arms going in the neck, right? We don't want that for this technique. We also don't want to headbutt less. But I don't want to put his arm up around my neck, okay? Like for a variety of reasons. One, there's more likely a rear naked choke to follow. But if we're starting from this grip where I'm clamping here, I'm not that concerned about that. Like he's not going immediately to a choke as long as I'm tight here, right? But what I am concerned about is I want the throw to come online or come on tension at the appropriate time. And that happens because I put my shoulder in. You can see when my shoulder goes here, all this rotation goes into less, right? This is moving him. When I put this here, it comes online way later, right? We just don't get the same connection, we don't get the same power, and it's much more common to get stuck with somebody on your back as a result, right? If I have done my 180-degree rotation, and I haven't had enough tension to throw this person yet, then they're just gonna be behind me, right? So I need to make sure that when I get here, I'm biting on this. My shoulder is out. It's a shoulder throw, right? My shoulder is out. It's not a neck throw, right? It's a shoulder throw. We're gonna be here. My initial motion is like an uppercut and a pull down on this elbow to get lots of tension through this. And then I'm just laying my hand over top. This would be the same if I had the lapel and he was gripping here. I do the same thing. I put it right there. You know, it's what Kathy said yesterday as well. We don't want to put it up in the neck, right? We really want that. People oversell the risk of the choke. The choke sucks, but the choke will tend to happen if they take your back. It doesn't happen without them taking your back. So the real cost of failure to this is getting your back taken, and the way we mitigate that is by being really good with our shoulder placement. Does that make sense? Okay, last time on this one, please. Let's really focus on getting that in there nice and tight. Okay, 1, 2. Jesus, it's a minefield in it. Okay, time. Again, I apologize. I know I'm going through fast on this. Some of this stuff is kind of like it's a new technique, but it's kind of a continuation of the last technique. For example, this will be an arm spin instead of a shoulder throw. They will look really similar in a lot of ways. But the thing I said I don't want you to do for the last one, I do want you to do for this one. So we are going to put the arm in the neck, but as a result of that, we're going to have to rotate significantly more, i.e. another 90 degrees, right? So last time we went 180, right? We went to here. For our arm spin, we're going to go another 90 degrees, and we're going to go to here, okay? Still good on the mic? I can't see. Okay. The reason we have to go further for this is because it is in our neck, and as I just said, it won't come online at 180 degrees. I won't have enough tension around their arm from that shape. I have to go that further spin, right? So we started again, east, south, west. We're going to finish north on this guy, okay? I also like to drop to my knees on this. Again, we're going to pre-address the cost of failure on this. The way this goes wrong, the way I used to teach this is I'd have people drop to their stomach. And it can be very strong and it can work really well, especially if you're good. Now I have people go to their knees, and it's more about making the cost of failure smaller so that the technique feels less risky, okay? So I'm going to do it wrong, or I'm going to have less sprawl, and I'm going to show you what we do when that happens and why it's not really a concern, okay? So same thing, I'm here, I'm going to take a step to the right. Now my left leg is going to go up, over, I'm going to turn, and I'm going to land on my knees. Okay, let's say less sprawls. I just pop my head out the back. The reason I can do that is I'm going to clamp his wrist, I'm going to keep it really tight, and although he can sprawl, he can't stop me from continuing to turn, take my head out, and attack turtle, right? So if I think of it as I'm going to wrap his arm, I'm going to pull turtle, and I'm going to attack his back from turtle, that's very low risk for me because the cost of failure is low, right? So I can just kind of try this thing, and if it works, great. So wrist wrap, elbow grip, step to the side. Arm goes all the way up in the neck, and then I'm going to turn through. I can almost guarantee what we're going to get is a lot of little twinkle toes. Okay, that's fine, but it's not preferable. I want to do it in one move. I want to go my right foot step, my left leg over. Does that make sense? Again, here, if he sprawls to his knees, I'm clamping, taking my head out, and I can come up and attack the back. Yeah? Again, arm in the neck, 270 degree rotation, head out the back. Here. Over there. Yeah, exactly. He sprawls, head pops out, we attack the back. Does that make sense? Okay, let's give it a shot. I have to clap on the mic.
What speed are you still getting a sprawl? Full speed?
Not usually, but again, I was really scared to try this. Successful, that's fine. But a couple of things I want to get clear on. I am moving, my intention is to throw less in this direction. So I want the weight to always be moving in this direction. I do not want to step past his legs, okay? I'm seeing some people that are stepping past the legs. What I mean by that is, these are less his legs. I don't want to step past his legs, right? I'm risking the side of his knee if I drop at this point. I want to make sure that I'm staying in front. My goal is to land here, not back here, okay? So when I go on this, again, from here, it's post. That establishes where my foot's going to go. This foot's going to land on this side of the leg, right? It shouldn't end up back there at all. So as I go, I'm here. Clamp tight. The reason I can put his arm safely in my neck is because I'm clamped tight. To finish the throw, this arm goes through his crotch. And we throw. Does that make sense? If I go here to my back, I don't want to turn here. That's how you end up on my back. I'm going to reverse and get to side control. Yeah? So, this throw was very difficult for me to commit to when I did it the way I used to, which was landing on my stomach, right? I used to do it like this. I'd have the arm, and I'd step, I'd limbo, and I'd turn to my stomach. Works very well some of the time, but when it didn't, it failed catastrophically, and we don't want that to happen. So going to my knees means that the cost of failure is very low, assuming I take my head out properly. I'm seeing some people that are like shimmying backwards to try to take their head out. I'm swinging my ear that is closest to his legs at his legs to continue the way that I was rotating to take my head out. So here, he sprawls. I'm not shimmying out. I am trying to hit him in the, right? Swing it out that way. That way, my armpit clears his grip, right? If I try to come this way, it's very difficult. This is very easy for me. Does that make sense? What?
He said that makes sense.
Oh, sorry. You're the only person who's ever answered that. I say that. I've got like a bunch of students here. I say, does that make sense about 50 times a class, and nobody says a word.
So you're using, it's like almost on your roundhouse. Okay? So you're rotating your hip, and you're kind
Yeah.
of like using this and you're doing this.
Yeah, I want to get my hip in, especially because like we're doing this at like a relatively forgiving posture where Les is really upright. If he was more bent over, I do have to get that limbo aspect into it where I'm going to throw my hip forward for a second. So if he's more bent here and I want to do this, I have to get that limbo where I'm turning through. So you do need to bring your belly button up and then drop to your knees. Does that kind of make sense? Hey, look at that. 2 for 2. Okay, let's try those two things. One, hit them in the leg with your ear to take your head out if it fails, but let's try to go to completion now. Okay? Elbow goes through the crotch, free hand goes through the crotch. And then it just becomes about rolling their shoulders. They should feel just like all the other throws where it feels like a forward roll for them. Okay, 1, 2. Yeah. So the degree of rotation we got on that was about halfway between the previous technique and this one. There's a gray area in the middle where you're like, I don't know if that was a shoulder throw or an arm spin. It doesn't really matter as long as you get it done. But again, can I borrow your arm for a second? Yeah, sure. Really focus on reaching for the ceiling with this arm and wrapping this around your neck, right? So I'm like, right up here around my neck, right? Really get that thing fully around your neck. Yeah, I'd love to. How's it going, guys? Still working. Work in progress. I'd be shocked if it wasn't, but that's okay. Let's see. Not bad. Heads up.
I'm dropping, sorry.
Okay, yeah, reach through, reach through, reach through. Reach through and put your shoulder on the mat. Yeah, put your shoulder on the mat. There we go. Good. Good. Where are my hips? Are my hips between their knees or are they outside their knees, right? So my shoulder throw here, hips between knees. My arm spin here, hips totally free. Does that make sense? There is a spot between the two where you're like, I don't know what that was, right? It kind of like, maybe I've got 1 foot in, 1 foot out, whatever. Both can work, but the important thing to know is that those two mechanics are what are going to dictate the amount of force required to throw the person. If I use my shoulder and I've got this big chunky object there that can bite and make the throw come online earlier, I don't need to rotate as much. But if I don't, if it went to my neck, then I have to get that extra rotation because it's going to come online later. Does that kind of make sense? You can picture it's like thread that I have to like spool up and take the slack out of before I get to the point of throw, right? If I put this shoulder in, I don't have to take out as much slack. It'll come online earlier. If I don't put the shoulder in, I'm going to have to spool it further to make the thing tight. Does that make sense? Okay, where are we at? Okay, last one. This is kind of silly. It does work, though. I have seen it work really, really well. This is our 360 turn. Okay, we will turn this into a single leg usually. So I would be here, and I would turn all the way through and drive in on a single. Okay, it tends to be a feint. You see it a lot in certain wrestling disciplines. It's the least. I put it in because I wanted to complete the circle. I'm just going to say that. Okay? You can feel free to just keep practicing the last stuff. But this is useful because sometimes the person is sweaty as hell and you get cut loose. You just lose connection to the arm. And having something that you can plan B on will, again, reduce the cost of failure and make all the other techniques less risky. So what am I doing? I am just turning all the way through, letting the arm go, continuing to turn through, and grabbing the leg, okay? The way I do single legs typically is exactly like that. I wrap at the ankle. I do not want to grab at the thigh. I'm really adamant about not ending up in this position. The Sumigash counter that we did with Kathy yesterday is like made for this and scores higher than most of my singles. So even in a jiu-jitsu context where all throws are the same, if he hits a Sumigash that lands in mount and he ends up with 6 points, and all I'm gonna get if I'm successful is 2 points for a takedown, the math doesn't work. Again, risk, cost of failure, bad math, right? But if I come down and I grab the ankle and I get my head in there and I bring the ankle up to my armpit, I can score really well off of that. So that's the one that I'm gonna do if I'm gonna do a single at all, okay? So here, big spin. He pulls his arm out because he's sweaty as hell. I keep turning, drive, and I would like to get it to here. Sorry, picked the tightest groin in the room. Anybody flexible? Nobody's flexible, there we go. Like, the previous instructor is gonna be so sad. Nobody's flexible. So here, big turn through, boom. When I drive, I'm pulling this directly up here, right here. You might notice my hands are not linked. I'm crossing my wrists, and I'm pulling this up as high as I can. I don't grab the foot or the leg with my fingers. I'm going right here to get it up as high as I can, as quick as I can. And then we can look at finishes. Apparently nobody's flexible, so people might just fall when you do that, right? That happens a lot, especially if you surprise somebody, okay? I'm gonna stop talking. Can we do that? You're gonna spin all the way through and grab the single leg, please. Okay, 1, 2.
Finish like the leg thing.
The farm scare.
No, the first one.
Oh, the knee pick, inside knee pick, yeah.
You have to rotate to the side.
Take a step and put your foot behind my foot. Yeah, feel that even that just kind of pulls.
But you
right?
kind of like
now push,
rotate.
yeah, push it out and lift this and pull down with the elbow. Just to kind of close the circle. It does have, sorry bud, Jesus. It does have its uses, but it's not a part of the A game, so to speak. The other material is kind of more important to me and what I really wanted to go over today and talk about. Any questions? No, okay. Nellie had a really good question. She was asking about on the knee pick, the very first thing we did. We're gonna recap everything really quick. But on the knee pick, which direction are we pulling? Like how hard are we pulling on the elbow? One way to think about all of our takedowns is like we're playing reverse engineer. We have to say there's a structure here. Where does it lack base and how can I put weights to that point to take the structure down? So if I've got less, once I make this shape, right, you can see the lack of base is over here, right? At best, he can take a bit of a back step on that leg, but it's not that much. But what some people were doing was driving hard with the head into the neck and driving the weight towards where there is base, i.e. the leg he has left. So I'm not trying to do this, right, where he can hop around a little bit. I'm trying to make sure that the direction is towards where he doesn't have base. So I'm pulling hard on the elbow, I'm elevating the knee, and again, I'll be almost driving my shoulder towards the mat on that side. This one will frequently just land in side control. It works really, really well. Again, depending on your context, some sports would encourage you to stay standing. Again, I get more points in Sambo if I stay standing when I take somebody down. But in a jiu-jitsu context where the goal is to pass the guard as well, we'd probably want to land in side control, so don't be afraid to come down on top of them. It was a very good question. What other questions do we have, good or bad? Nothing. I'm going to start making them up. If you were a sandwich, what sandwich would you be?
Just because I did something that I find really interesting when you go into the
Okay.
like the football.
Right. Yep. That's worth practicing on your own. Yeah. Early in the pandemic, when no one was allowed to touch each other, we had band classes at the gym I was teaching at the time. And we just did like all this uchikomi, just all these throw entries on rubber bands for like 4 months or whatever it was, right? And that really helped my footwork. It's the equivalent of like hitting the bag for a boxer, right? If you don't have a band, I would recommend grabbing one. You don't want one that's super, super tight, but you do want it with some tension on it because it'll help you make sure that you're leaning in the right directions, etc. And then that footwork pattern is very much worth practicing because like a ton of throws come off of that, right? I know there's some people in here with judo experience that are probably better at higher amplitude throws like Uchimata and Haraigoshi and things like that. It's almost exactly the same footwork pattern, that cross step, back step, cross step, back step. You're going to do that all day. It's definitely worth learning. Anything else? What's up?
My apologies for being late.
Oh, no, it's all good.
Could you show the entry again into catching the arm?
Yes. So again, like, it's not so much an entry as it is, it's almost more his entry. If Les and I are wrestling and he gets this deep underhook, my primary concern becomes him getting hip to me. As soon as he gets hip to me, I've probably lost, right? This is very, very difficult. My overhook, once his hip is in, my overhook on its own will not create a gap. I will need to kick him or something and then have a gap. But if I have a gap, my overhook will maintain the gap, right? So if Les tries to bring his hip to me, I can maintain that gap just with my overhook. But I cannot recreate the gap once it's gone without adding something else to it, right? So if he's deep on the under here, my priority is he cannot get hip to hip, and that's what I'm doing with this overhook. Notice I'm kind of almost reaching down. I'm focusing on putting pressure into his shoulder with my shoulder. It's not up here trying to pick him up, right? If I was gonna, if like you've probably seen a couple of highlight reel throws, like local guy Ben Dyson's got a couple of really nice Horizon competition, and Craig Jones had a really beautiful one on Dante Leone, and the scenario was this. He's got the under, he's driving in, go ahead, right? And then he came across and threw Harai that way, right? Our throws off of the deep underhook are, yeah, they're typically gonna be where I turn and I get our belly buttons facing the same direction, and I'm using either my hip or my leg to throw him this way. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to turn his deep under into a shallow under by winning head position and squaring to him. And now he's in my armpit, he's not on my hip, and this is where we're trying to wrestle from for our purposes. Does that kind of make sense? Do not take this lesson to mean that you never want to be on a shallow under. Shallow unders are great. I really like wrestling. The last seminar I did was all a whole system to attack off the shallow under. I really, really like it. I just had to pick something for today, and this is kind of what I picked. Okay. Yeah, so don't come away from this thinking you never want your hand in the armpit. Hand in the armpit can be great. We can do all kinds of fun stuff from there. And these two systems play really well against each other. It becomes like a, whole little mini game. Anything else? No problem. What do we feel like, if you were going to only do one thing from today, what do you feel like it would be? Ask for a refund. Fireman's carry? Yeah, for me, like honestly, fireman's carry, that specific throw is the thing I've scored in competition in every discipline I've competed in. I've got more of that throw than probably all other throws combined. I love that fucking thing. I do it all the time, right? Especially in the jacket. I've got setups for it in the jacket where I'll win this collar and I don't even get anything else, and as soon as he reaches over the top, I'm diving in on it and just collect the arm as I go. Like it's money. I really, really recommend that. Nomenclature-wise, fireman's carry typically in wrestling, Kataguruma in judo, Melnitsa in Sambo. Your arm spin in wrestling, Yoko Wakari, like Kathy said yesterday, in judo, Vertushka in Sambo. Okay? And then drop shoulder throw, Ippon Seoinage, or Spinna, if you're Google happy and you want to try to figure all this stuff out. Inside knee pick, I don't really know names for. I don't know what that would be. Teguruma maybe, I'm not sure. But yeah. What I would be happiest with is if you were able to implement any of this material, but I would also be very happy if you did not remember any of the specifics of the technique, but you came away from this with a framework for how to evaluate techniques on your own in terms of deciding how risky is this, how likely to fail is it, what is the cost of failure, is there anything I can do to adapt the cost of failure to make me more confident in the technique and thus make it less risky, and so on and so forth. Also keep in mind that no question exists in a bubble. They're always going to be about what are the rules of the event that I'm competing in, right? For example, flank scissors. Where was my flexible person again? Can I borrow you? If I hit my single, I'm pulling it here. Unless flying scissors are allowed. Then I would not go here because I'm old and I have bad knees, right? This is begging for him to throw that Kani Basami on me and blow my leg out, okay? So if I'm competing in an event that has a flying scissor, it's gonna be the exact same thing, but I'm gonna pull it up over here. And then you might say, well, why don't you just do this all the time? Because I'm in his guard. If I take him down right now, I now have to pass his guard, right? So anytime we're evaluating a technique, we need to know what context we're evaluating it in and figure out what makes sense, what do the rules encourage, what do the rules discourage, and so on and so forth, right? My club is called Matcraft. Everybody thinks it's because my name is Matt. It's not. It's wrestling mat. If you think of ringcraft, if you look up the definition for ringcraft, it says the strategy, tactics, and techniques of a boxer. Matcraft for me is the same thing, but wrestling, right? So I want everything to be looked at in terms of what is the context, where are we doing this, why are we doing it? Are we making decisions that the rules encourage? Are we making decisions the rules discourage? Are we confident in sometimes we can break the rules because we're just that good? Like having that kind of discussion and really thinking about why you choose techniques and how you choose techniques as opposed to just, well, this is what the instructor showed, so this is what I did. Does that make sense? So if you forget everything else and you just kind of come away with that mental graph and kind of plotting things on it, I'd be pretty happy. Where are we at on time? We have lots of time. Okay. Yeah, let's do a review. Let's do a review. Irv, can I borrow you? But no, you weren't doing anything. You were chilling. Yeah, sir, can I borrow you, sir? So again, clamp the elbow, clamp my elbow to control the wrist, head in the pocket, and get into here. Side note, if you're worried about putting head in the pocket because you don't want to clunk heads, put it on their shoulder or their bicep and wedge it in. That goes a long way, right? So if we're in here and I'm like, I don't want to bump his head, I put it here and then I wedge it in and I'll be okay. Okay? I want that foot forward for my knee pick, so I draw him, pull, right? Super, super easy, very low risk, very low cost of failure. One of my favorite techniques, especially against people that I know are good judoka that have really active turning throws and really active hips. We'll wrestle those people, okay? Same thing, can't reach the leg, or I just don't like that technique for whatever reason. My head goes in the armpit, my knee goes through the leg, I extend, clamp, and wrap the calf. Here, clamp, shoulder, throw, hips up, turn, cross. Okay, one more time at speed. This is my 90-degree turn. Head in. The more pressure I can get, the better for this. I really want him driving to me. Okay, nice and fast. Same thing, 180 degrees, initial position, cross step, arm comes across, curtsy lunge, both knees down, shoulder to the mat. Still want some pressure, still want some forward motion. Here, over. Does that make sense? Good example there. If it doesn't go initially, I want to be live toes so I can pop my hip up a little to finish, right? If I go dead toes, that probably would have died, right? But having the effort to be able to pop that up a little bit, because I went live toes, we'll make a lot of those throws go, okay? Arm spin, same thing here. This time we are gonna wrap the neck. Step to the side, I borrow my foot, I pivot on that better. Through, here, both my elbow and this elbow, go through the crotch, turn, scoot back, cover. And then our last silly thing, here, all the way through, lose it, take the mic off. Yeah, mic drop on the last technique, it's perfect. Any questions on the recap?
Can we do a recap? Like
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Of course. Grab it, try anything you want. Let me know what we want to go over again. We'll use the last couple of minutes. Okay, 1, 2. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
We're just being lazy as shit. That's why I
There's that. I think you may have ended up on an overhook on the leg. Right? I think you may have ended up here instead of under here.
I don't think I had your leg either.
You okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Very nice.
Jiu-Jitsu, I want to give you
Ooh, you guys, are we good? Our heads okay? Lose any childhood memories? Would you like to throw me at all? No? Okay.
Where are we going? That way? This is what I would like. Yeah. I'm screwed. Hi.
Hi, how's it going? Good, good. Questions at all? Or anything?
Well, because when I compete super heavyweight,
Right.
so the sky's the limit on the weight.
Okay.
And a lot of the times we're just standing.
Right.
Can I show you?
Yeah, of course.
So a lot of the times we're just standing here and we're just doing this.
In jackets
And
or no
jackets? Just gi.
Okay.
Only gi.
For a long time, I did these recaps after I would teach a class, and then I would go on my website and I would write a blog recap of it with moving GIFs and GIFs or whatever they're called, and YouTube links and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff is still there, so the clips you were looking at from today are on there if you want to go check. The inside knee pick, for example, is the last one. I haven't kept it up in a while, but it's still a pretty good wealth of information, so feel free to check that out. Well, I try. I do my best impression. And again, I love drop-ins, so if you ever want to pop by the club, you're welcome to. It's Kingsway and Broadway. If you ever want to come by for a class, we'd love to have you. You can try out a Sambo class. You could try out gi Jiu-Jitsu, regular nogi Jiu-Jitsu, whatever kind of works for you. 25, but you get a week free trial, so you can come try some stuff, see if you like it, and then if you don't, that's fine. But yeah. No, but we got a really chill group. We got a bunch of people here for today are my students, but it's a really chill group. But it's a small club, but it's coming along. So we'd love to have people drop in for sure. If you have your own club or you train at a club that you think might be receptive to like an intro to Sambo seminar or anything like that, I'm trying to do more of these. So I would really be interested in your reaching out if that is the case. Any other questions before I stop yelling? Sweet. Thank you so much. It has been an honor, guys. 1, 2. Can we get a photo?
Yeah, let's, I'm not going to finish better than that note.